Well, welcome into Western Edge Cellars, y'all. My name's Stephen K. Morris. It's a fantastic night in Fredericksburg, I have to say, and it's going to get better. It's great to see a bunch of folks out and about, socially distanced and comfortable right here at Western Edge. You've walked into a show called the Songwriter Spotlight Series. This is all about the songwriter, the road they travel, their art and musical creations, and their story. And my guest tonight is Mr. Jordi Baizan from Houston, Texas. How you doing, Jordi?
Hey, Stephen. Thank you, guys. That's very kind. It's great to be here. It's a short 3.5-hour drive. Is that legal? 3.5 hours? Or
Did you get it on
3 hours and 45 minutes. Sorry, guys.
Add that extra 15 so they think you
Just to
drove
be safe.
under the speed limit, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But a fairly pretty drive. You don't have to cross
Beautiful.
too many big towns from Houston
Beautiful,
to here.
especially the last part.
Yeah. You still seeing some wildflowers? We've had an unusually cool
Yes.
year.
Yeah, over there near Blanco and stuff, there were some flowers that I didn't recognize.
Yeah. We'll have to point them out. Of course, you're in wildflower country right here in the hills.
Sure am.
It's, we have the fortune of having beautiful highways.
Gorgeous.
Lady Bird Johnson, who lived right down the road, she
Ah.
seeded many of these highways.
Is that right?
Yeah, that was one of her projects as the first lady.
I did not know that.
Yeah, there's some neat history around the hill country, Jordy, and I hope while you're here you have a little bit of time to just cruise around and look at things. Well, I'm glad you're here, man, and glad you got here safely. It's always a pleasure to meet a new songwriter. I've kind of known about you through the network for a while, and we have some friends in common we were just chatting about before the show. And I know if you're hanging around some of the folks you mentioned, we're in for a good night.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Likewise.
Yeah, man. Well, we don't go too far along in the show without getting you to just introduce your music so folks can get a grasp on what they're in for the evening. And,
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that to start it off, I could start off with the title track of a record that I just released a year ago this month. It was recorded in Austin, Texas, although I'm from Houston. And the producer on it is a gentleman named Walt Wilkins, who's I know has spent time in this area, and a Texas treasure, and many wonderful musicians played on it. But this song was, I'm a city boy, born in Houston, but I went out to the desert when I was a little kid in the 7th grade for the first time. I went out to Big Bend and just fell in love with the desert. And got to return back not too long ago with another mutual friend, Terry Klein. Yeah. We did a little tour, and we met some folks that, like me, had grown up in the big city. And I wrote a song about those folks that had left the big city to go out and live off of the grid in places like Marfa and Terlingua and Fort Stockton. So this is called Desert Line. Sick and tired in Houston, run down from the stress. Valerie and Brian decided to move west. They bought a beat-up Airstream trailer, a real fixer-upper. They pulled into Terlingua just in time for supper. Now they're free and fine on that desert line, but they'll be hard to find, 'cause nothing's bigger than Texas. Hour off the highway, 20 miles from town. Like the yucca plant, they set their roots in the unforgiving ground. No neighbors to contend with, and no mosquitoes too. And when it rains, I swear it smells just like God's perfume. Now now they're free and fine on that desert line. But they'll be hard to find, 'cause nothing's bigger than Texas. You'd see them at the general store, they'd greet you with a smile. Their overflowing shopping cart would last them for a while. Hey. Well, the years passed by, word got out to family and friends. One by one, more Airstream headed toward Big Bend to get back to the land where the cost of living's low, where it's peaceful and it's easy and the sunsets don't get old. Now they're free and fine on that desert line. They'll be hard to find, 'cause nothing's bigger than Texas. Nothing's bigger than Texas. Thanks so much. Thank you. Thank you.
That's Mr. Jordi Baizan, y'all. He's our guest tonight on the Outsider Songwriter Spotlight Series, and I'm happy to be your host this evening. I'm Stephen Morris. We appreciate the listeners on KFan 107.9 FM and TexasRebelRadio.com, and also our viewers out there on YouTube now. We're doing this full video. Jordi, it's been going on a few years, and we decided to take it a step bigger. So I told you to dress for a video, right?
No, you didn't, but
a surprise.
Should have brought my tuxedo.
Yeah. Jordi, that's a great song, man. And
Thanks, man.
I have a great fondness for West Texas and specifically Terlingua and Big Bend National Park down there. And we were talking about that, I think, before the show. And I know several musicians that have been on this show from the Terlingua area, and they're exactly who you describe in the song. They're off-grid. They're living it, you'd look to, by all looks, is kind of close to the bone, you know.
Yeah. It's I love it out there. You know, there's always the grass is always a little greener. You know, I don't know that I'd really want to do that, but there's always I don't know. It tugs at my heart to kind of want to leave it all behind and go out and live a simpler life, you know. I think that's what I've related to, and hopefully other people that listen to the song and
I've had
can
those
relate to
thoughts too, and I always come back to retaining that area for kind of a little journey to go out when I need kind of a spiritual fix.
Yes.
You get out there and it's the quietest place you can find in Texas, maybe the country.
It's an awesome quiet. It's an awesome quiet, and it's also like death is right at your door, you know?
Possibly, yeah.
Right? But also it's full of life that you can't even see. But
it is.
As soon as it rains, like the flowers bloom, and, you know, at night all these critters come out. And
that's a great lesson in that area. And it does make you look a little closer to yourself. The life out there is small.
Yes.
And when it blooms, it's unimaginable. It can do it overnight with the rain that so rarely shows up.
Yeah.
Great song, man.
Thanks.
So, Jordi, you said you were born in Houston. You've been working on this new project, and that was the title track.
That was the title track, yes.
Yeah.
It was songs that I wrote over a couple of years before the recording, which was late 2018.
Right, and produced by the great Walt Wilkins, as you mentioned. He's certainly one of our favorites all the time. And
me too.
I'm sure it was a pleasure and a treat to work with he and Ron Flint and the crew there.
It was an honor. It's always an honor. I mean, I had to pinch myself a few times, come down to earth, to think that I was in that studio with all those amazing people. I don't know if, for example, Dick Gimbel. I don't know if you know who Dick Gimbel is. Bass player, amazing bass player, and his dad is like. He was telling us about how his dad got inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, and they went up for that, and Emmylou Harris was sitting right next to him. So it's just, for me, it's like maybe it's not 6 degrees of separation, maybe more like 24, but still, you just are in awe that this musical journey has brought you to get to relate to these types of talents and
That's right.
great people.
Yeah, it cut out a few degrees when you're sitting in the room with Dick and all those guys.
Yeah, but then they're so nice too, just real people.
Yep, that's right. That's what I find great about this music community and the way that we all interact, and those guys are willing to reach out. The guys that have been around ahead of us, kind of paving the road in front of us to do what we're doing here tonight.
Yes.
Yeah, it's great. Jordi, if you have another song ready, I'd love to hear one.
I've got a couple. So I mentioned Houston. I'm a dad, and my wife and I have been married for a good while. And we lived in a home in the southwest part of Houston for about 20 years. And I wrote a song about that it was a cul-de-sac, a little neighborhood street, and lots of young kids. I wrote a song about a neighbor of ours that his story really inspired me. And the song's called Time to Leave the Neighborhood. And it's about his departure from the neighborhood. And ironically, 6 weeks later, Hurricane Harvey hit, and we had to leave the neighborhood for good as well. So maybe that's the theme in a way, that change comes without expectation in life a lot of times and changes our direction. So this is Time to Leave the Neighborhood. It was a drowsy winter morning. I was reading in the front room. A distant ambulance came closer until its siren split the silence right in two. The street outside was lit up with flashing red and blue. Flashing red and blue. I walked over to the window, pushed the cold curtain aside. They wheeled out Mr. Richardson underneath a silver sheet. There was no one there to cry. When death asks, will you walk with me? It might come as a surprise. It might come as a surprise. This house has been a cradle for our children and our dreams, a refuge when we work too hard, a welcome for our friends. I've tried to live without regret. I hope I'll be as ready as I should when it's time to leave the neighborhood. Well, Mr. Richardson and I Spoke several times over the years, mostly about the Astros and his two sons. Brian was a salesman, Bill a high school teacher. We never mentioned Vietnam, but he made sure Old Glory flew on holidays, waving red, white, and blue, waving red, white, and blue. This house has been a cradle for our children and our dreams, a refuge when we work too hard, a welcome for our friends. I've tried to live without regret. I hope I'll be as ready as I should when it's time to leave the neighborhood. When it's time to leave the neighborhood.
Very nice, Jordi.
Thank you. Thanks.
Mr. Jordi Baizan. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I hope I'm saying your last name properly.
Jordi Baizan is good. That's the American version of it.
And what would the other version be?
My dad's from Spain, and
Right.
my mom's Cuban, and the correct pronunciation is Jordi Baizan.
Okay.
So
it sounds great.
you can
off
say it
of
that way,
your
too.
tongue. And I won't pretend to pronounce it properly tonight. I'll say it the good Texas way. And Jordi, you're a first generation American. You speak
That's
to your
right.
parents. Is it your mother from Spain and your
My
father
dad's
from
from
Cuba?
Spain, and my mother from Barcelona, and my mother's from Havana, Cuba.
Yeah. So it was time for them to leave the neighborhood in their lifetime and,
Oh, yeah.
and have you
Yes.
here in Texas.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah.
They both ended up living in Cuba during the 50s and 60s. My dad is 94 and celebrated Father's Day with me
Oh, how great.
this past weekend. 94 years old and still full of gumption for sure. But they both had to leave Cuba in the early 60s. They didn't know each other, but they ended up in Houston because of different family connections and met in Houston. And that's why I ended up in Houston. So
Very good.
yeah.
And we were talking earlier, as they opened up travel to Cuba, you got to visit a few years
In
ago.
2016, yeah, I went for a week, spent a week in Havana. My mom had one first cousin that stayed in Havana. He was a sympathizer of the government and ended up, he was a CPA for the new Castro government as they took over the businesses and so on. They needed accountants, and he was young. He was in his 20s, and he just believed in this dream and ended up, his direct boss was Che Guevara as they nationalized all the industries. So I got to meet with this man, he was in his 80s, and see what it was like for someone who had lived that, who had had that dream, and then, all the things that have happened there and the things they've gone through. It was fascinating, and he was just very grateful to have somebody from the family who was there visiting, and just a sweet older gentleman that took me around for 5 days, and I got to know the Havana where my mom had grown up and where my dad had worked. So it was pretty cool.
And certainly with a guide like him,
Yeah.
you got to see it in a non-touristy way.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
fortunate to be able to visit that
It was
part of your
It
family's
was
history.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're here now in Houston. Was there a musical background in some of your family, or is this something?
Yeah, lots of musicians
You're a
in my
pioneer.
family. Not my mom and dad directly, but they were music fans. So we always listened to folk music. I didn't realize it then that it was folk music, but we listened to Spanish folk music and Cuban folk music and Mexican folk music. But I didn't know who Bob Dylan was until my kids started listening to folk music.
Is that right?
Yeah, because of a teacher of theirs. And I had just started writing songs, and that's when I learned about Bob Dylan and Joni Mitchell and people like that.
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting.
That is interesting because it feels like everybody knows who those two are, Bob and Joni,
And I knew who they were, but vaguely.
you had never studied their music or heard much of it.
Yeah, I was more of a rock and roll guy, and I thought Bob Dylan had a crappy voice, and it just lyrics didn't interest me very much back then, you know. And that changed as I started writing songs, and I was like, oh, now I get it. You know?
So here's my question, and I've had this discussion with other people. Bob Dylan falls into folk music at the perfect time. It's like the perfect storm. Did he push his voice to that on purpose? Did he use that terrible voice on purpose? That's always my question.
Well, I mean, the like character of his voice is part of the attraction of him, especially early on. You're just like, you're captivated by his... I mean, he's like Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra doesn't necessarily have the best voice, but he has the nuance and the delivery. Right. And Dylan had delivery in spades, you know?
Sure. Yeah,
unique.
And I admire him. I'm not critiquing him, but I've always figured, did he buy into the hype and push the character further? I mean,
could be.
Certainly jump on the wagon a little bit and say, that's who you want, I'm going to give it to you. You know?
Yes.
And, of course, if you asked him, he'd say, what?
Right. Yeah, no, he's a very clever guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's always pushing it.
Are you familiar with his son, Jacob Dylan?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's another great songwriter.
Yes.
And you can understand all his lyrics.
Yes.
Well, enough about that, Jordi. We're here with you to hear more of your songs.
Okay. Well, thank you. So I will play a song that was inspired in Central Texas. I was on a ranch at that time of the day when the sun is coming down, the sun is setting, and the moon is rising at the same time, and you're standing between the sun and the moon. And I wrote down this idea of between the sun and the moon on my phone, and a couple of weeks later I was at the Kerrville Folk Festival with some buddies, and it started raining. We took refuge in a trailer, and the three of us, Terry Klein was one of them, ended up writing this song together.
All right.
The guy that owned a trailer had never written a song before, and it's the opening song on my record.
You had to initiate him.
Yeah, so it was really cool that he got to do that. So
That's very cool.
This is called Between the Sun and the Moon. A perfect afternoon in May, my best friend's wedding day, outside a clapboard chapel built in 1898. I saw you standing all alone on the limestone gravel road. In your bridesmaid dress, you were playing with your hair. The full moon on the rise, the sun sinking in the sky. We were standing between the sun and the moon. You, me, the sun and the moon. Rings and vows exchanged, the band began to play. You sat at a table, pulled the label off a bottle of beer. You finally caught my glance, I decided to take a chance. You took my hand and we danced to the Maiden's Prayer. Full moon on the rise, the sun sinking in the sky. We were dancing between the sun and the moon. You, me, the sun and the moon. The sun and the moon. The sun and the moon. Across the floor, step by step, dusk to dawn, breath to breath, I wished we could stay right there. Confetti on the floor. I walked you to your car. You kissed me on the cheek beneath the stars. All this time gone by, I think of you sometimes, and I wonder to myself where you are. When the full moon's on the rise, the sun sinking in the sky, are you standing between the sun and the moon? We were standing between the sun and the moon. You and me, the sun and the moon.
All right.
Thanks.
Mr. Jordi Baizan
Thank you.
in the house today.
Thank you,
Beautiful
Stephen.
song, Jordi. You're no stranger to the Hill Country. You've been in the New Folk Finals as a songwriter more than once, I believe, and at Kerrville Folk Festival.
Yeah, one time as a finalist, it was great.
One time as a finalist. You've been recognized at Songwriter Serenade, which is a great spot to find yourself.
In fact, that's where that song was inspired.
Is that right?
Songwriter Serenade, yeah.
Very cool. So you've made the rounds in the folk scene, and Kerrville Folk Festival, probably the oldest festival in the country. I don't know if they hold that medal, but it's close.
Yeah.
And I know, unfortunately, this year we're missing a lot of the festivals that we love. And anyway, but I'm glad you're back in the Hill Country. And, it's no replacement for getting to hang out at the festival, but it's a fun night in Fredericksburg.
Well, it's pretty darn good.
Yeah.
And thank you all for being here.
Yeah, thank y'all for
place.
hanging out here at Western Edge. Jordi, before we go on, I do want to mention a couple sponsors that keep this show rolling. That'll give you some reprieve here for a moment. One of those is the Tobacco House. They're purveyors of cheap talk and fine tobacco. They're located at 109 South Washington Street across from the Nimitz Museum. Tom Carnes is in the house, and he's got his Tobacco House cigar ready as usual. And y'all visit the Tobacco House when you're in Fredericksburg. You can find your favorite cigar or pipe tobacco. They've got a full bar, a great lounge. It's a nice spot to stop and have a sit down. Look them up online at tabak-haus.com. Also, Majesty Wine Tours. When it's time to tour the Texas Hill Country, call Majesty Wine Tours. They'll drive you to drink and treat you like royalty. Yeah, thank y'all. That's a good crew there at Majesty. You can look them up online at majestywinetours.com. They have packages already designed for you to get you around the wineries or all the venues you'd like to see in the Texas Hill Country, or you can customize your own package. So call Majesty Wine Tours. And last but not least, the Texas Silver Rush. You'll feel like the rock stars they designed for when you shop at Texas Silver Rush. They have fine custom jewelry. You can find things they've designed or some of the scores they've found in the shops and the resales. So anyway, visit the Texas Silver Rush while in Fredericksburg or online at thetexassilverrush.com. And we appreciate those sponsors for keeping original songwriters on the road and traveling and sharing music. We love our live audience here at Western Edge, y'all. Thanks for hanging out. I want to reintroduce Mr. Jordi Baizan, who's our guest tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
You guys can see this show even when you're not in Fredericksburg on YouTube now. Look up the Outsider Songwriter Spotlight Series. You can come get a sticker so you can remember the full title. I've got brand new stickers for that, so y'all throw $1 in the tip jar and grab a sticker. Anyway, we appreciate y'all for listening to original music and right from the guy that wrote it. I'm going to throw one in as well here sometime tonight.
Can't wait.
Yeah. Well, why don't I do that now that I'm on a roll
Yes,
rambling?
I'd love to hear you.
And then we'll get back and talk some more Jordi history and future maybe. And we'll just keep going forward.
Sounds good.
I see you've got a new instrument at the ready there,
Yes, I
Jordi.
do.
And all right, well, you get that worked out and I'll throw one in. And this song came to mind as you sing yours, and some of those some of your songs kind of hint at leaving or lament at the separation of people. So I want to throw in one that I consider my goodbye song. And I wrote this for a dear friend years ago as he passed on a little too young. And it's become a song to kind of commemorate all our friends and times gone by.
Beautiful.
This is called Stormy Weather Friend. Yesterday we sat to play all our favorite tunes, knocked the dust off the old ones by the second time through. Maybe it's selfish of me to say this ended too soon. Melodies you played drove us far from the blues. Notes you picked always rang true. You kept up like you always did through the thick and through the thin. So long for now, goodbye till then. I'm gonna miss you while you're gone, my stormy weather friend. Well, today I lost direction on a path I always choose. I backtracked down the road a while, try to find my way, thinking about those talks we had just the other day, remembering how you made me laugh with the things you had to say. Say a wrong turns a side road with a different point of view. Feeling lost and loneliness is a part of moving through. So long for now, goodbye till then. I'm gonna miss you while you're gone, my stormy weather friend. Well, tomorrow may shed some light on things we don't understand. Until then, we'll drive on, taking side roads when we can, holding tight to the memories you left here far behind, whistling to those melodies we played all the time. Well, I don't know where your heart is, but I know where it's been. I guess it was too big to stay tied here earthbound. Life won't be quite the same without you hanging round. So long for now, my stormy weather friend. It's so long for now, goodbye till then. I'm gonna miss you while you're gone, my stormy weather friend. So long for now. All right, y'all. Thank you. That's called Stormy Weather Friend. They're always better than fair weather friends, right, Jordi?
I like that. That was beautiful. I love that line about the heart. What was the line?
I don't know where your heart is,
but I know where it's been.
I know where it's been, yeah.
I love that.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
I
We always appreciate listeners that pick up on some of the lines.
Would have liked to meet your friend.
Yeah, he was a good one. A musician. His name was Ron Young Mac Thompson. And his mother stuck him with a big name. And I kind of relate to that. I have a long name myself. So
It's great.
Jordi, you say, and you talk about having just released your second full solo album. So that leads me to believe you were in a band or a group at some point.
Yeah, I started. My first record was released in 2010, a band record. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thank you.
Thank y'all for hanging out.
And I released a record in 2010, and it was just a bunch of guys, a bunch of dads that got together and started a little rock band. And then I started writing music, and a few years later, we had released 3 records, and we were playing around Texas, mostly Houston and surrounding areas. And that gave me a taste of, kind of my dream when I was a very young man. I had this dream about being a musician, but I never really had the guts or the opportunity, maybe, or a combination of both.
Raising kids takes a lot of time, too.
Yeah, so I kind of went a different road and then kind of got back on the old road again a few decades later. So
yeah,
I'm pretty fortunate to be able to do this now. So
we're glad you're doing it. You say a bunch of dads playing rock.
Yeah.
Did the kids like your dad rock?
They did at first before they hit teenage, and then after that it wasn't so
They don't
cool
like
anymore.
anything parents are doing when they're teenagers.
It wasn't as cool.
You have 2 kids?
They used to work the merch desk and stuff
they?
like that. Yeah, take money, and they loved it.
Yeah.
Then after a while, I had to look for other volunteers.
Yeah. I'm sure you knew your listeners were suckers for kids asking for money for dad.
Oh, yeah, we learned that too. That was always good.
Yeah. Are your kids musical? Is it something they've found interesting?
Yeah, we have 4 kids, and I would say 2 of them are actually, practicing music on a regular basis. And they all love music, and so,
nice.
Yeah.
All right. Can we hear another song?
Sure.
Yeah.
I would love to do that. This is kind of a personal story. So we got flooded in Harvey and ended up having to move into several different homes. Friends and family let us stay with them for about 8 weeks. Stayed with my in-laws for about 8 weeks specifically. And then we moved into an apartment complex. And we'd always lived in a standalone house with our kids. And being in an apartment, it's a little different. But anyway, I love the apartment. I work out of the house, and I loved the place. It was brand new, but my wife just never felt like it was quite home. And I noticed after a while that for 7 months she didn't hang pictures on the wall of the apartment. And so I thought that might be an idea for a song. And I wrote this song with Jackson Emmer, actually.
There you go.
He was
Another
coming
guest
through
of the
town, another prior guest of this show.
That's right.
And a wonderful songwriter from Colorado. He came through town. We played a show together and wrote this song down by the pool at this apartment complex. It's called Pictures on the Wall. Moving in, planting roots, boxes on the bed, packing peanuts, rolls of tape, here we go again. Seems like yesterday we've done this before. We're stones that keep on rolling, and life just keeps unfolding. Every turn just leaves us wanting more. When do you hang pictures on the wall? When does a house become a home? In between the living and the final curtain call, when do you hang pictures on the wall? Taking steps, no regrets, breaking in the bed. Rooms for friends and barbecues, cold beer in the fridge. Hoping that we'll find sunny days ahead. I know I've been drinking, but I just get the feeling we might have a permanent address. When do you hang pictures on the wall? When does a house become a home? In between the living and the final curtain call, when do you hang pictures on the wall? We can wait until it's right. but there ain't no perfect time. Let's take a chance and settle down. It's our place, it's our town, never more to roam. When do you hang pictures on the wall? When does a house become a home? In between the living and the final curtain call, when do you hang pictures on the wall? In between the living and the final curtain call, when do you hang pictures on the wall? Thank you.
Great line, man.
Thanks so much.
That's Mr. Jordi Baizan, y'all. We hope our listeners out on KFan will look him up online, jordibaizan.com, and that's JORDIBAIZAN.
You got it.
.com.
Thank you.
All right, I remembered. That was my one for the night.
That's great.
Jordi, it's such a treat to have you here and hear your songs, and I can totally relate to the feeling of not knowing when to establish yourself somewhere. And I've moved a lot over the years, and I always tease. People know I like to garden, and I tease. I just plant onions, shallow roots. You can pull them up quick and go. You know, when
That's
do
right.
you hang pictures on the wall? That's
right.
clever. Of course, I think Fredericksburg has got me. This is going to be my spot for a while.
That's great.
Yeah. Anyway, Houston, what side of Houston you living in?
I live in the Heights now, so we moved. We lived in the southwest part of town in a little neighborhood called Ayrshire, which is kind of in between Bel Air and West U and near Meyerland, and that area's. I've always lived like 3 blocks from a bayou, you know.
There you go.
And I still live 3 blocks from a bayou, but we're at 59 feet above sea level, which in Houston, that's like a mountain, you know, relative to being below sea level like we were before. So that was my wife's number one condition. Wherever we go, it needs to have elevation, you know. So that's what we were looking for.
That's a tough request in Houston.
Yeah, it is.
Well,
but we're very happy there. So
yeah, good for y'all. Well, if we can hear one more before the radio hour is over, I'd love to hear one.
That would be great.
Yeah, man. And we wish you great travels this year. And
thank you.
I'm not done with you. We're going to trade more songs after this. If our listeners are out there on KFAN 107.9 FM any Wednesday night, you can show up at Western Edge and hear 6:30 to 9. You can hear a great guest in this show.
And enjoy great food.
Great food,
and
great drinks, full bar.
Yeah. It's a
And
pretty sweet setup.
they'll even see Jerry Sotelo hanging out in the house. He's one of our favorite personalities on KFAN and KNAF. And he's behaving tonight. I don't know what's wrong with him. How you doing, Jerry? Good. We put up with you because you bring your wife, Ida. That's partly true. Mr. Jordi Baizan.
Thank you. I'll play one last one. I'm fortunate to be able to travel. I was fortunate to be able to travel. Recently, that's changed with all that's going on. Like for so many of our musician friends, they're not getting to tour as much as they used to. But I love going to different places and seeing how people live. And it's just really inspires me and gets me out of my regular routine. And I come to Fredericksburg and imagine what it might be like to live here, maybe a few blocks off of the main street, and come here for dinner with my wife and hang out and make new friends and that kind of thing. But this song is set in New York City, and it's about imagining what life might have been like in this imagined story. It's called "Could Have Been Us."
All right.
Monday morning rush on the uptown line. Bodies press and sway. The train car rumbles and whines. Tired of staring at the phone, I looked up. I saw lipstick on the lid of a coffee cup. The cheekbone scar, the lotus tattoo were clues to solve the mystery of you. At Columbus Circle, you turned to get off. I couldn't help wondering if it could have been us. It could have been us. Later that year, in the neighborhood store, I saw you checking out, just one register over. I noticed the tomatoes, the nectarines, your skin, and that guy that you were with, who was more than just a friend. The way you looked into his eyes was like morphine for pain. The brush of your fingers like a warm summer rain. The two of you fit like a hand in a glove. I couldn't help wondering if it could have been us. It could have been us. Grown-ups aren't supposed to be lost in childish reverie, but maybe daydreams teach us what we really need. We got a little snow. I took Jack out for a walk. I saw you standing on a front stoop, arms wrapped around a box. You lugged it down the stairs to the back of a van. Well, it was clear to me that Brooklyn was no longer in your plan. A voice came from the front seat. Okay, Jessica, let's drive. You smiled as you passed me on the passenger side. I mustered, have a good one. The engine started up. I couldn't help wondering if it could have been us. I can't help wondering if it could have been us. It could have been us.
Very nice.
Thank you so much.
Jordi, very nice, man.
Thank you. That was so fun.
I heard that song earlier today. I was going through some of your music, and as I do before I get to talk to my next guest, and that one throws signals of like James Taylor, and
Oh, that's good.
to me. And on that note, who are some of your favorites out there that you?
Well, James Taylor is one of my, he was one of those guys that really inspired me because I realized what could be done with just a guitar and a voice and a good story. And I was like, wow, that would be really challenging to be able to do that. And so he was definitely an inspiration. Neil Young, Bob Dylan. But earlier on, I would say James Taylor, maybe John Denver a little bit.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really in the songwriting culture, I just kind of caught it because James Taylor was pretty popular back when I was growing up, and so it just gave me a little glimpse of a future
There you go.
life,
Yeah, and I think subconsciously when we try to go into any skill, we probably draw from those that we observe doing what you're going into. So maybe just by subconsciously you're drawing from that. So,
probably.
Yeah. Very nice. Well, I've enjoyed this. Are you doing some Facebook Live right now? I know that a lot of our musician friends are.
Yes, I'm doing YouTube and Facebook Live. So if you guys are interested in subscribing to my Facebook or my YouTube channel, Jordi Baizan, I've also got an email list here. And I'm doing at least once a month doing a live stream.
There you go.
And then trying to play maybe some outdoor shows and that type of thing until things get back to COVID normal.
Right, whatever the normal is.
Whatever that normal ends up being.
I've never known much normal anyway, Jordi.
Yes. Yeah.
But I hope your everything goes forward for you well and blessed. And get home safe. Come back and do this show with me again.
Oh, that would be an honor. Thank you for asking.
It'd be fun. Thanks for sharing your tunes tonight. And all our listeners out there, Jordi has some CDs in the house if you're part of our live audience. If you're out there online watching, jordibaizan.com, you can find all that below. Also on KFan, we appreciate our listeners. Look him up. Go get Jordi's music. Help him pay the fuel bill for this show right here.
Thank you.
So, Jordi, thanks a lot, man. Anyway, folks, we're going to sign off the radio hour. This has been a good one, as I expected.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
Absolutely, man.
All right.
Thank you all very much. Remember, folks, we're a small crowd, but we're mighty. We're going to take a short break, come back, play a bunch more music. Maybe less talk, maybe not. You never know.
We'll see.
Jordi, thanks, man. Hey folks, thanks for joining us online to watch the Outsider Songwriter Spotlight Series. That's right, we're taking this thing to a new level. Videos, every guest, every week. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell so you can be notified when we release new material. If you like the show and want to support us, you can tip through Venmo. There's a link below. Check out TheOutsiderSongwriter.com. That'll be up and coming soon. Thank you for your support over the last 4 years. The show's growing. We've had over 150 guests, and we promise to have a lot of new great songwriter guests. Please continue to share with your friends on your social media accounts. Come on into a show. Join us when you're in Fredericksburg. You can be a part of the live audience. Downtown under the dark of night, somewhere between shadow and light, over the edge of lost and found, you can hear neon, feel the sound. Be well, folks. I know we're living in strange times. We'll get through this together. We'll see you soon.